So, Christopher Lee, welcome to the Inquiring Cat Does Recruitment.
Thank you very much.
And I've asked you here today because you're a successful, although fairly recent, entrepreneur. Now, when I gone to students to talk about entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur as a career, which I've been one myself for many years, it's basically a sellout, standing room only. All these students think they want to be an entrepreneur. Not all of them think that after I've spoken to them, of course. And there's also the opportunity to be an entrepreneur after an initial career. And that's part of what you did in your journey as well. So, co-founder of Buddy Bites, you started your career selling luxury, high-end audio-visual equipment to people's homes in Cheshire. And then you went into recruitment, where you were obviously very successful because your company posted you off to New York and then Hong Kong. And you were a very successful recruitment consultant. What suddenly happened? Why pet food?
Yeah, when you read it back to me, it doesn't seem like the obvious career path. The direction into pet food came very randomly. I was recruiting, as you say, fairly successfully, depending on who you speak to. And one of my good friends in Hong Kong had recently completed an MBA. He was itching to start up a subscription-based business model. He was just trying to figure out what sort of product would work well in the Hong Kong market. For that, we were chatting over dinner. He started quizzing me on dog food. And given at the time Ryan didn't have a dog, I thought it was an incredibly strange line of questioning. But he added some more context, and we got chatting about it and how it was incredibly difficult to find decent dog food in Hong Kong, often having to import it through various channels. There was no delivery service to speak of. No big brands have got any feet on the ground out in Asia because it's not a big enough market to bother them. And so we felt there was a gap in the market. I wasn't really looking for an exit from recruitment until one reared its head, and then I couldn't stop thinking about the opportunity. I didn't really give it a second thought. It was, this is something that I want to do. And I think on reflection, I'd fallen out of love with what I was doing day in, day out. But I think until there's something to take you on a different direction, you don't really admit to yourself that you're not really enjoying what you're doing, because there's no way out of it.
And also, you've got to be brave enough to make the leap. And I think this happened around COVID time. Did that help?
Massively. We are one of the very small minority to look back on COVID fondly. It offered us a huge opportunity. We were both doing our corporate roles, both directors of the business, but being able to work from home during COVID allowed us to be quite flexible with how much time we were putting into our paid job and the new startup that we were plotting. So we were trying to do right by our employers and do what was necessary, but we were certainly testing those boundaries. And so yes, during COVID, September 2020 is when we'd been planning it through the summer, but then it was launched in September 2020.
So it was a home delivery business of dog food initially, but you weren't allowed out in Hong Kong. There was tight restrictions. So how did this work?
Yeah, in actual fact, it was another positive for us, because what Hong Kong did was they just shut the borders. So they just said nothing's coming in, but we were fairly flexible in being able to go out for hikes wearing a mask. We were able to go to brunches as long as there was a screen up in front of you. It was all incredibly surreal and strange, but what it did mean was that it was incredibly expensive for people to leave Hong Kong with their dogs. So it actually kept the dog owning population fairly contained, which was of huge benefit to us. But the very start of it, thinking back, it always draws a smile to Ryan and I, because we were delivering dog food out to the back of my second-hand car around Hong Kong whilst people were fairly locked down. And to then think where we're at today, it seems a long time ago.
So Hong Kong became a dog kennel for a while.
Exactly.
And I think you were playing amateur rugby for Hong Kong Rugby Club.
Yeah.
So did running around with one of these 5 kilo bags or whatever help keep fit?
Absolutely. It also offered us a good network to tap into straight away, the Hong Kong Football Club. And Hong Kong as a whole is an incredibly well-networked, nepotistic sort of place. There's a huge number of people in a very small space on that island, and word of mouth and our direct network was a huge factor in early success. I don't think that if we had launched in London, we would have had the same impact very early on. And I think the other factor that was a huge help is the fact that we give back to dog shelters. So for every 2 kilograms we sell, we donate 1 kilogram, which seems like quite a small amount, but we now donate...
It's a 50% ratio.
Well, exactly.
Very generous.
But it's now up to 9 tons of food every month to about 15 shelters in Hong Kong, Singapore, and now more recently the UK. And the shelters have been our biggest ally throughout the journey, but certainly early on. Our first shelter was where I adopted my 2 dogs from, and it was really... The Buddy Bites was a philanthropic side gig to begin with, but then once they posted about us on their Facebook account, we immediately got to 100 orders. Yeah.
So when an entrepreneur starts a business, and I know this, I started several businesses, and only one of them became a multi-million-pound overnight success. I mean, we were sort of staggered, frankly, and I've had lots of failures. But I always comfort myself with the fact, I think I'm right in saying, allegedly, that Richard Branson numerically has had more business failures than successes. Although, of course, his successes have been stellar. I can't claim that for any of mine. But did you have, I mean, you say you had a good network. So you didn't have the challenge necessarily of getting orders going, but were there any other particular challenges in launching as an entrepreneur? I mean, what were the big hurdles that you had to overcome?
Our food is made in Europe. We hadn't ever worked within the pet space before. We hadn't worked in logistics before. All of these things. And I think also you make what you look back on now as mistakes along the way. But it's sculpting the business from a very, very simple framework to begin with into something that can have some longevity. We started it incredibly simply with 2 recipes, one for puppy, one for adult. We only did subscription, which limited people that might want to do one-time purchase first. And so looking back on that, you know, that's something we might have done differently. But the challenge was sort of, firstly, the mindset of, we're really doing this. And then secondly, trying to teach yourself things along the way, sort of, you know, flying a plane whilst building it type thing, of what to outsource, like the accounting function, what not, what to keep very much controlled by yourself. And so we've made plenty of mistakes along the way. Fortunately, the line has kept going up. So
I think every entrepreneur you talk to would share that experience actually. And I look back at the various businesses I've done, and yes, I mean, every time you do it, but it's like building a house. People say if you're going to build a house, you need to build 3 before you get it right. And of course, it is a learning process. Did you use any mentors to help you shortcut or avoid some of those mistakes? Because I know that I've had a fantastic mentor in my life, Godfrey Gillings, who was the former chairman of Fimbra and a NatWest Bank director. And Godfrey has just quietly and gently from the sidelines given me the most incredible advice as I went on my career. I wish I'd listened to him more, or actually done some of the things he said. But did you have any mentors working with you?
I hope I'm not doing anyone a disservice to say there was no one specifically that we went to for day in, day out advice. However, we did get angel investment very early on from someone who was a serial entrepreneur, and they were always on hand and available to offer advice. I think that there are a number of success stories within the consumer space in recent years that you can, and information is so readily available these days, you probably have far more insight into what did or didn't go well for other companies that have done well. Also, I mean, looking back, I can remember speaking to one of my brothers who was running his own startup, which was food prep in the UK. Sadly for them, plenty was going wrong at the time. And I think there was probably an element of learning from speaking to them about things to avoid that they've gone through recently. So you learn from mistakes just as much as you do advice, probably more so. I think it's a combination of areas, but we've managed to hire good people and bring good people onto the cap table, so we've had no shortage of good advice and help.
So you mentioned briefly the business model of working with the dog shelters. I don't want you to give away any of your corporate intellectual property in this film, because I hope lots of people are watching. But can you unwrap that business model a little bit more about how it appeals, why it appeals? And
Sure. So I mean, there are 3 pillars to the business. It's premium nutrition. It's sort of fresh protein first, premium carbohydrates, our probiotic, prebiotic blend to help with gut health. So you've got to tick that box these days. People, I mean, the dynamic of sort of Gen Z and millennial is that people are having kids much later. They're having pets instead. They're treating their pets like kids. Fantastic for us. Very strange for economists, but it's resulting in people wanting to humanize the food that they give to their dogs. So looking for things like blueberries, kale, superfoods. It's the type of thing that you would never find in pedigree years ago. So that box is ticked. The convenience factor, delivering to your door, being able to order online, having a convenient subscription so that when you're running out, another bag just appears. You don't have to forget and go and find whatever's on the shelf and then clean up your dog.
And that builds great annuity income if you've just got the orders ticking away. Let's face it, the magazine industry has survived for years, actually on the basis of people forgetting to cancel their magazine subscriptions. And it keeps arriving, they keep enjoying it enough that they don't make the effort to cancel it.
Well, exactly.
And if your dog's still alive, you've still got to feed it.
Well, precisely.
So, it's
so this is exactly the thing. I think it's, you have to feed your dog. If the food is good and they like it, and it's convenient for you as a consumer, because the thing is our clients don't actually buy the food, it's the dog, but you've got to appeal to the human factor, and that's the convenience. Then you add the hook of, with every order, you know, if 10 kilograms turns up at your door on Saturday, you know you've donated 5, and it's very tangible and very
fantastic,
very easy to do.
So you've spoken there about the quality of the food. You're not a chef.
No.
You're not a vet.
No.
Who determined that this was great food?
So, well, the dogs mainly, but we have brought a vet into the business very early on.
Yes.
We work with a nutritionist in the US to help us with curating all the recipes. Ryan and I will follow where we see gaps in terms of expanding the product portfolio. We're launching dog supplements this year, wet toppers, etc. But once we've got a commercial idea, we'll then go to our vets. We'll work with nutritionists.
And are you going to move into other pet categories like cats?
Yes, this year. Yes.
So the Inquiring Cat will be very pleased.
Far more relevant now.
You know, if you want your business to get noticed, have a puppy or a pussy. That's what I always say.
We were planning on launching cat food this year regardless, but we have now signed a deal with a Taiwanese retailer who wants to launch both dog and cat exclusively. So we're full throttle now on that. So
you've come into the UK market a short while ago. How's it going?
It's going well. It's been more of a soft launch. We're going through a round of funding currently, and every dollar spent at the moment will get more return in Hong Kong and Singapore for now, until we can do the UK properly. It is essentially the plan. But yes, it's very exciting to finally be on UK shores with it.
And what is your research basis for? I mean, obviously you're English by birth, but if you were going to open another country, what would be your research basis for another country?
I mean, Google is incredibly helpful with giving you all the information and Euromonitor, etc. on where are there highly affluent with a low birth rate. Those are markets we want, because that is where people are spending money on pets. So Asia is, I mean, UK for me personally, and from an ego perspective, having it in front of friends and family, is a great opportunity. But Asia really is what's exciting about our brand, because there's no other brands out there doing it. I would say we're already the largest online brand in Asia. And you've also got markets like Seoul, like Tokyo, like Ho Chi Minh, like Bangkok, who are, some are incredibly affluent already, some are increasingly year on year. And our model really applies without much competition.
I know when I was working with, well, what should I say, a well-known opticians that everyone should have gone to some years ago, helping them expand, when I was in recruitment, helping them expand their operations around Europe. They had a very interesting model about assessing which countries they should go into. And it looked at all key metrics relating to their business, obviously, but other things like what was the corruption level in a country, and all these kind of aspects which could impact the success of their business or the difficulties that they might encounter as they expanded.
Yeah, I mean, I think Google's probably quite flippant. I think there are markets that will connect with our brand and brand voice more so than others. I think that when we consider markets that from the outside look well suited, we have to think, how many of the parts of the business would we have to change in order to move into this market? Australia, for example, seems like a good move, but we would have to produce in Australia, so we would need a new supplier. And so that's quite a big change. Whereas the UK, we can stick with our supplier. We don't need a new marketing team. I'm from the UK. It's the path of least resistance sometimes.
So I think I'm glad you mentioned marketing. I think your marketing what I've seen has been somewhere between insane and inspirational. What happened with these?
Line, isn't it?
What happened with these trams in Hong Kong?
So the trams have been fantastic. So we don't tend to do much out of home marketing because I think that it's very hard to quantify what you get back from it. There's
Define out of home for the...
So banners, posters,
Yep.
putting your brand over trams, buses, all that
Yep.
sort of thing. Anything that isn't online, essentially.
Yeah.
If we put an advert out, we know exactly what the click-through rate is. We know exactly what we get back from it.
Yep.
And as a startup, I think watching every penny,
Yeah.
you need to have that justification for spending any money.
Yep.
Out-of-home marketing for us is an opportunity to gather emails, really. And so we've run several competitions of get your dog on a tram in Hong Kong or get your dog on a bus in Singapore. Everyone is convinced that their dog is the most gorgeous, handsome boy or
Yep.
whatever it may be. So they've always been very, very popular. And then the winners then get sent to a photo shoot, and then they see their dogs on buses or trams around Hong Kong.
What a
Singapore.
brilliant idea.
And from that, we probably don't get many sales, but we've got 5,000 emails that now receive our email marketing. So
Yeah.
and it's fun and it's great to see. You spend so much time in a city, and then you see your brand going around on a tram when you're on your way to work, and it's incredibly rewarding from an ego.
Is it very
perspective.
expensive to stick a picture on a tram?
It is. You only do them for a fairly short amount of time because as I say, the benefit is in the emails, and you've got them there. But it's really nice to see it out there, but it is expensive, so it's not something that at the moment we have the luxury of doing over and over.
Yeah.
But we plan to do one in the UK very soon.
So Sadiq Khan may yet get a bit of subsidy from Buddy Bites
Potentially.
for his buses. So
Although our first shelter partner is Edinburgh Dog and Cat Home, so it will likely be an Edinburgh-centric
very good. Yeah.
project.
So thank you, Christopher. Fascinating journey. I hope that's given some insight to people who are thinking about being an entrepreneur. One question I did want to ask: what about people in the midlife? They've been in the corporate payroll. Do you think it's more difficult for them at that point, rather than people who almost at the beginning of their career decide to become an entrepreneur?
I think it's a leap of faith at any point. I think it depends where you're up to with your career. I think you can get trapped by the golden handcuffs of your job is going well. You may not love everything about it, but hey, that's life, it pays the bills. And then the other option is more risky. However, I haven't for 1 second looked back and wished I'd stayed in recruitment.
So I interviewed Guy Allman, who's a tech bro, recently. And so whereas your happy circumstance really was catapulted by COVID, his was catapulted by a management buyout going sour. And at the time he was devastated, but looks back now and said it was the best thing that happened to him. And he had to make a decision: was he going to go get another corporate job, or was he going to start a business with 3 young children under the age of 4 and a wife looking at him rather skeptically? And he has recently, after 31 years, great success in the tech space, just sold out for a really eye-wateringly impressive sum. Good luck, Guy. Well done, and thanks for participating in the channel. And I think that's often the case. And I certainly, when I became an entrepreneur, it was because the politics in corporate life were killing me. And I didn't think I'd see 50 if I carried on. And I said to my friends and to my family, my family were frankly astounded that their incompetent son had risen to be in the top 80 people of a global group worth billions. And I had imposter syndrome myself. But when it came crashing down for me and my mental health, I was taking pills like Smarties, prescribed ones, I hated that. I actually said, do you know what? I think I just want to have a Labrador and go and flip McDonald's in a beach hut. And if that's my life from now to the end, I'm happy. But I don't want this BS anymore. And of course the joke was that immediately catapulted me into the arms of a fantastic entrepreneur, the best boss I ever had, who basically financed me launching my own business. So what a great joke that was.
It's incredible the routes that it can take, but I think sometimes it does need something out of your control to derail where you've become too comfortable. For a lot of people, I think I was in a luxurious position that we kept me off the P&L for some time. Ryan took the leap very early on. We then built the business to a level where it was a bit more of a certain thing. Not a complete sure thing, but it was closer to it when I jumped in, which was to keep a second founder salary off the P&L. But it actually was quite made it quite easy for me compared to Ryan anyway.
When I met that great guy I just referred to, he'd started his own recruitment company, and maybe thinking it was a good deterrent to stop people leaving him and starting their own, he used to quite often say, you know, it cost me £1 million to launch this business. And I think myself and the team all sort of went, you know, whatever, you know, don't believe that. And when he sold the business, I promised myself I wouldn't leave to start my own rival operation until his earn-out had completed. And literally the day his earn-out completed, I said, awfully sorry, old boy, but I'm leaving to set up a competition, which, you know, he wasn't entirely happy about. But I have to say, we are great pals. I had dinner with him just the other night. And I would say it cost me £1 million, because I went from earning a very large six-figure sum, over £500,000 a year, to nothing. And I didn't earn anything for 2 years. So that was £1 million before we even start to add up all the money that went into premises and all the infrastructure, you know. So I think that people underestimate sometimes the fact that you have to make a sacrifice in many circumstances.
Oh yeah, I'd be walking away from whatever I was earning in recruitment to the very quizzical looks of my fiancée Emily of dog food.
But Emily is still with you, married, or nearly married, and you've got 2 dogs.
We do.
What a success story!
And a child now as well, so I think she's fairly settled. But it was a strange one to say that this is the route that I'm going to take. But it's been incredibly rewarding, not without its stresses. But it is costly. I mean, fortunately, there's 2 of us founding the business, so we sort of share those costs and stresses. But so we managed to do some of it on a shoestring. You can get to a certain point, but if you then want it to go beyond 0 to 1, you've got to have more infrastructure. You've got to have larger accounts.
One of the things, of course, the great thing now is that what you don't need at an early stage is an office, because business is so virtual. And when I look back at the money I spent on filing cabinets, because we didn't have a cloud, the money I spent on offices,
stationary bills through the roof.
And I also hired too many people too quickly.
Right.
And I didn't manage them closely enough. There was too much trust. And sometimes you will find when you hire people, they think, oh, he's an entrepreneur, he must be worth a fortune. He's giving me a job, how nice. And I'll sort of wander in and literally drink tea and eat biscuits and occasionally do a bit of work. I came across quite a bit of that. And whilst my mantra in life is, as far as possible, be kind, although I'm sure somebody somewhere will say you weren't. I try to be kind. I think it's a good motto in life. You've got to take tough decisions and be pretty ruthless, because what you can't do is let the whole house of cards collapse because there's 1 weak link. So keeping the team small, well managed, closely monitored. So it's the old thing about, you know, management. Recruit, train, motivate, and control. And I think you need to do that with everybody you bring into a small business. So who knows where this interview will end up in our world. It certainly will be a while till it's on Mars with Mr. Musk. But people might be watching in Hong Kong or Singapore, or indeed in the UK. So let's talk about Buddy Bites in the Hong Kong. Where can they buy it? How do they get it?
So we're always online, www.buddybites.dog in Hong Kong, and we are increasingly in retail outlets as well. So we've made a move into retail spaces.
Any particularly well-known brands that are carrying it?
Well, in Hong Kong, Feather and Bone, Marketplace, CS Fresh in Singapore, Pet Lovers Centre in Singapore. We'll be popping up all over the place. We've got a number of contracts that will be happening this year as well.
Now, I grew up with a dog. I had a wonderful dog later in life for 16 and a half years. Then I travelled the world on business and I couldn't have a 4-legged friend. And more recently, a good pal of mine who's a dog nut lover, he does dog fostering because he flips between here and America. But he put me on to borrowmydoggy.com, and we look after other people's dogs, which is fantastic because we don't have any vets bills. So we know a lot of dog owners around where we are here in the south of England. You mentioned your first shelter is up in Edinburgh. But if I'm here in Surrey and I want to buy Buddy Bites, where do I go to get Buddy Bites in Surrey or anywhere else in the UK?
Yeah, so we are online only in the UK. So it's buddybites.co.uk, and then delivered to your door from there. We will move into retail at some point in the UK, but we want to build the brand first, build some awareness so that as and when it's seen on shelf, people recognise it. Our second shelter is in Kent, so a bit closer, so Last Chance Animal Rescue. And once we're feeding both of those shelters, our third one is Oxfordshire Animal Sanctuary. So a bit more in the southern region coming soon.
So just to be clear, because people listen to these tapes, and of course they can't write quickly, so give me slowly the name of the shelter that will benefit in Edinburgh.
Edinburgh Dog and Cat Home.
And in Kent?
Last Chance Animal Rescue.
And in Oxford?
Oxfordshire Animal Sanctuary.
I'm sure they're all very grateful, let alone their residents.
Yes, they are, and most of them have cats, obviously, as well. And so they're very much looking forward to us helping them on that side as well.
Christopher, you've been a star. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think you've illuminated the world of the entrepreneur for our listeners. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we have more episodes coming up on how to be a knockout candidate and applicant for jobs, hot tips to make you a winner, but also more interviews like this. We have Sir Anthony Selden coming up, the famous educationalist. We have Sally Phillips, the actor from Miranda fame, and Colonel James Cunliffe will be talking to us about how to get into the army. So there we go. Lovely to have you with us, and we'll see you again soon.